Happy Wednesday, everybody, and thanks for checking in to our latest Trade to Black podcast. First time this week. Hope everybody had a great long weekend. Good to be back with all of you here, 4 o'clock, as we start to unveil some of the information. I know there's a lot of people right now where sentiment seems pretty low in this space right now. So we'll look at yesterday's appointment, new lead counsel of the HHS. I know a lot of people worried about that appointment and what it could mean on the cannabis space. But again, should we read much into this? Well, we're going to bring in David Culver from the United States Cannabis Roundtable to talk more about the appointment and among other things. We also have a new weekly segment. It's called Psychedelic Market Minute. We're going to bring on former NHL hockey player Dan Carcillo to talk about the psychedelic space and what it could potentially do now that RFK is officially the head of the HHS. So let's welcome in here on a Wednesday, AV, Mr. Anthony Varrell. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week so far. I've never seen sentiment this bad in the 10 years that I've been looking at this or participating in the space.
You think so?
I mean, you had CEOs literally on Twitter questioning the validity of the inflows into the MSOS ETF, which I think Noah addressed on the Nooner today, which I don't really know why Noah even needed to address that. It's kind of just allegations of fraud.
Yeah.
I know that people were making a big deal out of Jason Wild selling some of his position in MSOS in JW Asset Management. That means nothing. He might have gotten called on options that he was selling. Jason Wild starts selling TerraSend, you can freak out. Like, it doesn't. People are just nitpicking on everything.
I know.
And I think people need to remember, we were pretty adamant that this isn't going to be in the first 90 days. Don't expect to see anything in the first 90 days. We are well within that time frame of the first 90 days. And I mean, all jokes aside, like, if you're taking this way too serious right now, you might want to just cut your losses and like get out. You're probably not going to hear something for a while now. The ball's in the DEA's court as it relates to rescheduling. Trump's going to have to get to this when he gets to it. And you got to roll with the punches, but nothing's really changed except for a couple Marijuana Moment articles.
Yeah, well, what'd you think of some of that stuff? Genetically engineered, according to Mike Stuart. You know, I think that probably that part grabbed a lot of people's attention about the current state of the product that's being sold amongst the cannabis market right now. But, you know, I think what go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I think it's uninformed. I don't think that it aligns with any of the people's beliefs that are watching the show or people's beliefs that are within the industry. Let's take into consideration it was 8 years ago. People change in the way that they think about things in 8 years. I don't have the same school of thought that I had today 8 years ago. There was also a clip after I started tweeting about Mr. Stewart's appointment from 5 years ago that he had a pretty level-headed view on cannabis. Like, shouldn't be adult use. Medical makes sense. He wasn't saying it was a gateway drug. He wasn't saying it was going to completely blow up society. Just, we need to take a cautious approach to the plant.
Yes.
And that's kind of his purview on it. I'd be willing to bet he probably has an evolved view today as that was 5 years ago. Like, people's views change. I understand why Tom does some of the reporting that he does. It gets clicks. It sure as hell got me looking into it at face value. And then once you dig in deeper and kind of peel back the onion, I'm not saying that he's a cannabis advocate by any means. I'm also saying that he probably doesn't have the worldview that cannabis is some genetically modified gateway drug, the way that it sits today.
Tiger, from my understanding, yes, Doug Cass is still buying.
Cass is still buying. Doug Cass is absolutely still buying.
Well, take it for what it's worth. I was speaking to a few people today in the industry, executives in the space that actually are headed to the White House tomorrow. So as much as we want to get news right away, there's some stuff that needs to be put together behind the scenes, but it's still coming to fruition. The right messaging is still getting through from what we continue to hear. And this executive actually said they were speaking to a number of U.S. Republican senators last week who are very much concerned about potentially losing their job. You probably have seen it on Twitter over the last week or so, where Elon Musk has basically voiced how he'll primary a lot of these senators in the next election, forking over some of his own money I think 10 million. And when you equate that to his overall net worth, I think it's like 0.002%. But we continue to communicate that this is going to be a decision by the DOJ and ultimately Donald Trump, and less about, the cabinet that he's forming, and take that for what it's worth. But that's the message that we continue to hear time and time again. So I understand. Kind of reminds me right now what we're in is like the dog days of summer, where people there's no news right now. People are getting antsy and they're just freaking out about anything and everything, because it seems like every single time there's some story that gets posted about a new appointee, it's just like, I don't know, when you look at the history of cannabis, what is going to be positive based on a new appointee? Like when you look at a new DEA head, of course they're going to be against cannabis in the past. It's just, where are they today?
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's also pretty important to contextually understand where we are, because I would argue that we probably are at the lowest point within the sector.
Yeah.
You've got all the top companies in the space with significant debt on the balance sheet, unpaid taxes, a hemp industry that is completely out of control. That's an outside force that definitely is cannibalizing some sales. We're still licking our wounds from not getting adult use in Florida. The environment's pretty bad right now. But from a sentiment perspective, from a conversation perspective, from just overall momentum with actually getting some sort of meaningful reform, I don't think we've ever been closer. But people are starting to get a little bit freaked out with all the forces that I'd mentioned are weighing in on the validity of the top performers moving forward, especially because a lot of them do count on Florida for their financials.
Well,
some
of the stuff that's being spread around as far as fear, it's working, but we're trying to calm the storm. We look at this from an unbiased opinion. Like, there are some things that people have some valid questions. So what we like to do is we bring on thought leaders from the industry. And with that, let's welcome in Senior Vice President of the United States Cannabis Roundtable, David Culver, with a smirk on his face, as I probably have heard our intro. What do you make of that, what we just discussed?
Well, I think you guys hit on some important points. But look, I've been saying this since the beginning of the year. We have got to be patient with this administration. And being patient and doing so with a smile on your face is a very, very difficult thing to do.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard. And I think this is something that I preach day in and day out. We're starting to have very good conversations inside the administration as people are starting to find their way to their offices. Many of whom are not even there yet. And we talked previously, as you guys referenced in your opening, just about the fact that we knew going into this administration through the discussions with the transition team that we were not part of the first 100 days. And they still fully intended to move forward on cannabis reform. But we were going to have to wait our turn. And they've got a lot of really big priorities that they're getting out of the way now. And then our time will come. And we're socializing that right now. We've had absolutely no indication from the White House in any way, shape, or form that they plan to pivot from this. And then final comment I'll make, just in terms of your opening statements, is that I understand the concern that folks have, the hand wringing that folks have. I get these same calls that you guys do day in and day out, especially given the media reports about some of these personalities. But what I will say is that we still have all the reason in the world to be optimistic about President Trump. This is the first president we've ever had that has a full-blown pro-cannabis reform position, and a really strong one. So, we're still inclined. We're not inclined. We do believe that the president's going to follow through on his promises to the American people, and I'm excited to get that work done. But we're going to have to be patient as we go through the process.
Yeah.
So where are we in the process? Is it safe to say that we're pretty much in the same position that we were in before the election, as far as, let's say, in the process, if you're kind of just reading the tea leaves?
Yeah, I would say with one caveat, Anthony, which is that we know that the White House could dispense with the hearing itself that has been underway and is currently stalled. And we do have legal opinion to that effect that we have been socializing with folks inside the administration. They could do that. They could immediately go to final rule. So we went ahead and provided that legal guidance, which they're going to have to socialize internally with their own attorneys if that's the intent. But we wanted to make it clear that our number one priority is to move cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, which the president's in support of. And here's the legal pathway for you to do it in a very, very quick manner. And that's what we've been providing.
So that information, is it provided to, let's say, the DOJ, or is it provided to someone within the administration?
Both.
Like direct,
Yeah.
both. Okay.
Yeah, so you think about it this way. You have federal agencies that are going to be part of this, important parts of this conversation. Department of Justice, of course, is probably the most important of the agencies. And those individuals have not quite found the way to their seats yet, but they will soon enough. And that's when we will go and begin our conversations. HHS is another agency that we're going to need to go to and also socialize the conversation with them about what our priorities are. Inside the White House, we have the Office of Public Liaison, and we also have the Domestic Policy Council. And these are going to be really important groups inside the building that are going to help to guide us on how they plan to proceed and ultimately land the plane on the president's priorities. And this also includes, Anthony, advocating for congressional reform. So this is not just rescheduling.
What did you make of, did you see last week RFK's appearance on with Laura Ingraham? Did you read much into that? Like, from what I gathered, it's just like, if you read between the lines, I still think it's very much the focus is on rescheduling. I think he does want to see, obviously, further research pertaining to this industry. Adult use is something that we're not even going to entertain. That's going to be left with the states' rights, which makes absolute sense at this particular time. But what'd you make of it?
Well, the president's given us a very, very clear roadmap about what he supports, and he did so in October of 2024. His cabinet secretary, I thought, followed the script perfectly.
Okay.
And again, there was an enormous amount of hand-wringing after this discussion that he had on Fox. Folks calling me saying that we need to go and see this individual immediately. This is a 5-alarm fire alarm that we've got to deal with right away. That's not how I read it. I actually saw this as really very much in line with what the president has been supportive of. The research piece of this is critically important, and that's something that Schedule 3 will obviously help to facilitate. And of course, the comments that he made around potency that many folks were concerned about, I think are something that we are going to have to deal with in a responsible manner as an industry. And we've talked about this on this program before. And I think that this would almost be the equivalent of saying, like, let's go ahead and just pass out bottles of Jim Beam or grain alcohol all over the place to people that are just not cut out to consume an intoxicant that is that high dose. So this is a conversation that we've got to have. It's clearly on people's minds, including the Secretary of HHS.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, because I've been on the record on the show talking about THC caps to a certain extent. High potency THC products, do they have their place within what we are ultimately fighting for? How prepared is the industry, and how prepared should people be to have these tough conversations moving forward? Because I think people got alarmed with hearing catastrophic effects. If you give a person a dab rig off the street and have them start taking hits of concentrate, they might have an episode. Like, they might have something catastrophic in that instance happen to them. And these are hard conversations that I think are ultimately we're going to have, because people that expect this just to be like, we're going to schedule and we're going to legalize marijuana in its current form, there's going to be no changes, like, no pun intended, that's a pipe dream. To think that we're going to get something like that done.
Yeah, I can't comment on every single company out there in terms of their position on potency or caps. But what I can tell you is that the U.S. Cannabis Roundtable, soon to be U.S. Cannabis Roundtable, we are absolutely committed to responsibility. And that has to do with our advertising and marketing standards and potentially this issue too. But this is an area where the industry, being the fledgling industry that it is, needs to do better. And we need to take a page out of beverage alcohol and really model ourselves after that, the responsibility efforts that we've seen from them. And I know that from the conversations that we've had since the beginning of the year with the U.S. Cannabis Roundtable leadership and our board members, our executive committee members, there's absolutely the commitment to do so.
How is it progressing? Like, I know a lot of the board members are in a blackout period. It's because it's earnings season just right around the corner. And I think it's actually starting next week, if I'm correct. But what's the sentiment like? If you could share just some of the stuff that they're seeing, the progress that's being made.
Yeah, so just to back up quickly for the audience, we've been talking about a merger between U.S. Cannabis Council and National Cannabis Roundtable for over a year now.
Okay.
And I think before the election, the two boards decided that this was something that we absolutely needed to pursue. And once the election was over with and we saw the opportunity that's right in front of us, and by the way, we have a great opportunity right in front of us to everybody listening. And I'm excited about it. We decided that it was really important for us to begin the merger discussions, and they have expedited them. And we should be hopefully announcing something a bit more formalized here in the months ahead. But the merger discussion has been really, really well received on Capitol Hill. We are now one big entity advocating in exactly the same way with a broader set of individuals on Capitol Hill, and we are doing the same with the administration as well. So lots of happy congressional staffers when we were announcing.
Is the goal to eventually have that conversation directly with Donald Trump?
Yeah, for sure. And I think you guys know that there have been CEOs and other folks that are really important advocates in the cannabis reform space that have talked directly to the president about this. But yeah, absolutely. Our intention is to make sure that we're doing our spade work at the staff level. And then ultimately that culminates with a discussion with the president himself, because I've said this repeatedly. Everybody that's inside this administration serves at the whim of the president. They make that very clear when they sign up. And if he decides that when he decides that he's ready to move on cannabis reform issues, and particularly rescheduling, they're going to be open-minded and they're going to implement his will. So I would like to see that ultimately occur. And I think the trade associations, ours would be the one to lead it.
Yeah.
As far as I guess strategy goes, and as far as appointments go, has there been any talk, or is there anywhere within your talking points to recommend, let's say, like a cannabis czar that sits within the cabinet? And I'm only drawing this because of David Sachs being put in as the crypto and AI czar. It seems like a very specialized position with a very nuanced industry that needs somebody that is I don't even say thought leader, but industry professional in there to oversee how policy gets handed down on the federal level, and then kind of oversee what's going on in the states coming out of Washington.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yes, I would absolutely love to see that, Anthony. But if I'm sitting in the White House myself, I don't think we're quite ready for that individual to exist. And when I say that we're reaching out,
that's a fair
comment. When I say that we're reaching out to individuals at various agencies and also groups inside the White House, they have an individual who probably has dozens of files or issues that they have to handle. Cannabis is just one of them. And I think it's really going to be those core individuals that we work with to land the plane of the president. Now, in terms of a czar, if and when we get to a point where we can start discussing a whole plant solution with this White House, and I think we're going to be able to get there at some point, that's when we're going to need to have somebody that leads as a full-time employee all day long, every day on cannabis, to talk about the federal regulatory structure, what the congressional bill would look like, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where that czar position would come into play.
Based on the work and the agenda that you guys have planned from the roadmap ahead, is the goal to get an official ruling versus actually going through the whole process of an ALJ hearing?
Yeah, so to my point earlier, what I would very much like to see them do is for the president to announce his intention to go to Schedule 3, and for the DEA to pull the notice of hearing and go directly to final rule. That is ideal situation. So really, the hearing, which is currently stalled, becomes null and void, and they go right to final rule. That's my hope. And like I said earlier, we do have legal opinion on this. That we spent a lot of time preparing with outside counsel.
I bet
we're passing along to the White House team.
Well, we had
go ahead, Chad.
I was going to say we had Weldon Angelo on a couple of weeks ago, and I think the biggest thing that he communicated to us from his conversations with Donald Trump, and you hope this is the case, is the common sense thing comes into play versus what a politician would normally do. But look, I'm not going to sit here and speculate to say, like, what are the chances you think of that happening? Because there's still a lot of work and there's still a lot of unknowns, but it's good to at least know at this time, the agenda and the goal right now is to basically get a ruling versus the ALJ hearing to be drawn out, is from what I'm hearing, right?
That is what you're hearing. And, again, we have no reason to believe that the president has pivoted from his position in any way, shape, or form. In fact, just the opposite. The conversations that we're having with folks are good. We're having to do a lot of education, but we're going to have to wait our turn on all of this. And then I think when it is our turn, we will have done the spade work with this administration to get them to the point where they can go ahead and implement the promises, and particularly the move to Schedule 3 that the president made to the American people. And he is a politician. You're seeing it right now, every day. He's following through on the promises that he made during the election, and they've got a big whiteboard, a long whiteboard full of all sorts of things that they need to do, and they're doing it day after day.
As far as the ALJ goes, I'm assuming with this opinion being circulated and the emphasis on, let's say, foregoing the ALJ, we haven't heard any sort of movement as far as the DEA moving the steps forward in that interlocutory appeal that we're currently in.
We have not. And again, I should probably also comment just about the individuals that we may see at the DEA. You started off the show talking about Mike Stuart. There's been a story every single day with a negative headline about some individual who's going to serve the president who said something negative about cannabis 10 years ago. Well, how about we get a comment from some of these individuals, number one, that's current, and then I will start to pay attention to their position. And number two is each one of these individuals serves the president of the United States, who's been very clear about his position on reform.
I said that
I can live with, I can live with the response from RFK that we're going to follow the science. The science is there. There's 252 pages of it that the HHS has already rubber stamped, and the OLC already came over the top and said, yes, that is legitimate. We're basically co-signing that. As far as I'm concerned, that's all the science that you need to get us to Schedule 3.
Yeah.
It doesn't get us descheduling. It doesn't get us legalization, but it gets the process done that's currently in place. I don't understand how people think that there's going to be some overriding going on or backtracking going on as far as it relates to the science that's already been put forth.
Yeah. I mean, look, we had 4 years of inactivity. We had Democratic control. We had a Democratic sweep for the first two. We had Democratic control, for also two years after they lost the House of Representatives, but they still held the White House, obviously, and the Senate as well. And we didn't make any progress. And we got a lot of promises for a lot of years. Nothing ever came to be. But this time feels very, very different to me.
Yeah.
And I see no reason why folks should be wringing their hands February 19th of 2025 when we know full well this is probably something they'll turn to in Q2.
Yeah. First 100 days.
I tend to agree with you. I just think it's the price action and the fundamental story right now with a lot of the companies. And it's the fact that hemp is scaring the shit out of people from a cannabis investing standpoint. Hemp is starting to, I think, put a lot of pressure on a lot of people. It's just getting exponentially more popular. We're seeing certain bills go into place that are trying to dial it in. I know that I saw another bill in Alabama, I think it was today, banning over-the-counter cannabinoids. Now, while I'm for certain aspects of the hemp industry, I think people seeing that proliferate as MSO fundamentals, I don't want to say stagnate, but kind of just go par for the course. That compounded with silence and people getting completely just uneasy. It's just having a compounding effect all around as far as sentiment goes.
If there's ever an industry that lacks patience, it's this. And we all know that people like to just blow things. I get it. The thing's been delayed.
I don't know about lacking patience.
Well, they want stuff.
People have been pretty.
Look, we're an emerging industry. There's regulation that's involved. This doesn't happen overnight. And I realize there's probably timelines that people wanted this to get done sooner. Of course we did. But this is the situation that we're in now. And I think anything negative, obviously, is going to get blown out of proportion because people have obviously been stung a number of times in the past. But, I think realistically, and maybe David, you can outline that, like as much as things want to happen sooner, I would think behind the scenes, things are moving quite fast on your end. Are they not?
Very much so. And, again, you think back to just the first year and a half of the Biden administration.
Yeah.
It wasn't until October of 2022 before they decided to initiate the rescheduling discussion. And I can tell you that a year into that administration, I would never have come onto your show expressing optimism like I'm expressing now with the Trump administration. It is a wildly different discussion. And
I bet.
We've got a lot of education that needs to occur with staff members that are coming into the White House, many of whom for the first time, many of whom are very unfamiliar with they're familiar with the president's position, but they're unfamiliar with the industry and the issues that we're advocating for and why they're so important. So we're doing a lot of that work right now. And, again, like, I hate to say this for the third time, but we're going to have to be patient, and we're going to have to do it with a smile on our face. And that's the best way that we're going to get through this. And there's more and more people that are getting involved with what we're doing at the U.S. Cannabis Roundtable. There's more and more CEOs that are putting chunks of their budget into political activities and engaging themselves with this administration in coordination with us. And I'm seeing really a groundswell of support from industry leaders for the work that we're doing here in Washington, D.C.
It's good to know.
And also, I think just for context, when I'm saying that people are not being patient, I know that we've had Shane Pennington come on and say, guys, the rescheduling process is moving at a lightning pace. Compared to historical norms. I'm just talking about as an industry as a whole. We should have been rescheduled years ago.
We should never have been on schedule.
Correct.
So I think that conversation maybe we shelve for another day, and we can put a pin in that one. But in terms of the move to Schedule 3, it's absolutely the right move for us. And there's going to be so many individuals that on Capitol Hill within the administration, just nationally, that change their opinion on cannabis reform when the president makes this announcement that he's going to do it, and when they do it. I mean, you talk about the prohibitionists that we're running into on Capitol Hill. There are a select group of them that we hear from on a regular basis in the House and the Senate, but there's so many members that are on the fence on this issue. And when the president comes out and takes action on this in a positive way, it's going to change a lot of hearts and minds.
100%. And that's the message that we continue to hear. These senators don't want to go to a primary, basically, that Elon Musk has hinted from what we're seeing online. But these are actually comments that we're hearing from U.S. senators out of Washington. So let's see what happens. One way or another, like it or hate it, the topic of cannabis is getting brought up, and that's a good thing for the industry.
It is a good thing. And, I really appreciate the work you guys are doing. I appreciate everybody that's listening to this and paying attention to this. But for those of you that are wringing your hands, stop doing that and start doing something that is more proactive and positive, because, I need your help. We need your help as an industry trade group to raise the discussion around cannabis. And we've got a lot of groups out there, seniors, veterans, concerned parents about age gating and products that are problematic that their family members are getting their hands on because they're not properly regulated. We're seeing all of these groups starting to come together and starting to make a lot more noise than we ever have before. And again, that gives me even more hope that we're going to get to our turn in line here sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
I think you made a very valid point. Consumer education is paramount, and there needs to be a study done on the percentage of minors that have actually purchased cannabis from a state-run regulated cannabis dispensary. I would bet it's close to zero as far as that goes, because the problem is too, is I would guarantee you the parents, if they see their adolescent using a vape, they're not even willing to they're not willing to make the differentiation that that's probably a hemp derived product from a gas station versus something from, let's say, a True Leaf in the regulated market. The regulated market's locked tight. And we need to start reinforcing that state-run cannabis businesses are essentially never selling to minors, and regulations work.
Yeah, they do. And that's the point that I think we can hang our hat on. We're going to talk about cannabis with this administration. They're coming at it from a very, very different perspective than the Democrats did. They're coming at it from public safety perspective, states' rights. They want to make sure that these products are not adulterated. They want to make sure that the kids are not getting their hands on them. It's pretty basic stuff. And the only way to do that effectively, in my opinion, is to have a federal regulatory structure that is a fairly light touch, but brings in the tools that the federal government has that states don't necessarily have to protect the public. And all of these cannabis products, hemp products, they should all have public safety top of mind. And that's how legislators need to be thinking about this. And that message will resonate with this administration, that I can guarantee.
Yeah.
Great update. Appreciate you checking in. Let's keep in touch. Okay, David?
Thanks for having me on. Great to see you both.
Yeah, it was great. Voice of reason right there. Something we needed, right?
What we need very, very widespread public education campaigns. You know what scared me shitless to go into a dispensary? People telling me that black market cannabis you get on the street, it's probably got heavy metals, pesticides, it's not tested. Okay, as soon as I figured that out, never bought it again.
Yeah. Changing
perception through education is the way to roll with this, especially as per the safety and stringent measures that the regulated markets take. I would be willing to bet that, going into a dispensary with a fake ID is probably impossible.
Yeah.
Well, even in a adult use market.
That topic is at the front of everything right now, but like it or love it, like I said, it's a topic that's being discussed, which is a good thing. So that wraps up segment number 1. It's now time for our new weekly segment, Psychedelic Market Minute. Back here at Trade of Black Podcast, welcome you into the Psychedelic Market Minute, where we cover the business and reform side of the psychedelic industry, which is presented by Advisor Shares ETF, PSIL, an ETF that invests in the emerging psychedelic sector. Let's welcome in this week's guest, founder of Experience Onward and former NHL hockey player Daniel Carcillo. Good to see you.
What's going on, guys? Nice to be here. It's been a minute.
How's things been? Good?
Really good.
Yeah.
Man. Operating.
So, founder of Experience Onward. So this is a center basically out in Portland, Oregon that you've launched. When did this all start? And tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so obviously been a staunch advocate for this ever since it saved my life and reversed early onset dementia diagnosis from 7 concussions in the NHL, and offered my story to Measure 109, which is a regulated program that voters voted for back in 2020. 2022, and it created a framework that service centers can have a license, so you can open up a service center. There's also licenses for manufacturers, so a very specific way to grow the mushrooms. There's licenses for facilitators. Think of these as therapists that sit with people and the medicine inside of a service center. The service center can order the mushrooms, and then there's testing facilities that test the mushrooms. So facilitators and service centers know exactly what we're giving to prospective clients, and so that created this framework, and we opened up the 13th legal above ground mushroom facility in the United States of America.
Wow! So
go ahead, Shay.
I was going to say, when was that? When did that launch, Daniel?
So beginning of December, soft launch, Jan, and we're just having a coming out party. We have our first veterans retreat. I'll be in Portland, Oregon for that this upcoming weekend. We have legislators coming and a big media day, and we'll be doing our little media dance here in the coming months.
That's great.
When you're looking at the profile of the people that are coming to these centers and that are doing these retreats, like, who is it? Is it the person that's seeking alternative therapy from, let's say, traditional medicine? Is it someone that wants to be like awoken to a certain extent and just have like a deeper meaning and find clarity? Who's going to these centers?
Yeah, so I would say about 10% are curious beginners, people that are kind of the healthy norms that just want to maybe expand their consciousness, or there's somebody like you that is an entrepreneur and wants to maybe increase processing speed, focus, things of this nature, and then a lot of them, because of my following, are concussion survivors who really have no hope. Doctors tell them that they have to live a new normal, and they've spent tens of thousands of dollars at these cash paid neurological centers and really gotten nowhere. A lot of them are veterans suffering from PTSD, depression, anxiety, as well as being on a myriad of synthetic medicines that the VA prescribes. So we really see, run the gamut to also, moms and women going through menopause. So really just a wide variety of individuals suffering from indications that really the current medical system just can't address.
Right.
With that being said, do you think that we finally reached the inflection point in this country with RFK and with this kind of with the Trump administration, where this is going to be started to be taken very seriously as a medicine, standardized and put into practice, let's say nationwide eventually.
Yeah, I think, to speak to that, the FDA has deemed psilocybin, which is the active compound in magic mushrooms that we use at these clinics, FDA breakthrough therapy designation with 2 different companies. So Compass Pathway holds that. They're in phase 3 treating treatment-resistant depression. Their phase 2 trials, it worked around 50% of the time. Much better than the current standard right now of SSRIs and antidepressants. And to qualify for TRD, you have to try 3 treatments that didn't work. So they're not necessarily going after an easy population. And then USONA has it for MDD, so major depressive disorder. There's over 25 states that have some form of legislation moving through for either adult therapeutic use or decriminalized bills. There are 32 cities and states in the United States that have decriminalized psilocybin, and it's a very highly studied molecule. John Hopkins started studying it back again in 2006, and they have over 150 cited papers. So, will we see it medicalized? We're very careful to call people clients. We're very careful to. Our intake process is the same that you would take to say get access to a Johns Hopkins clinical trial. The preparation that's necessary is extremely paramount. The screening that's necessary. We've actually said no to a lot more people than we've said yes to, just because of the amount of medications they're on or because of their mental health history.
Interesting.
But it is promising. Colorado just opened up, and there's other states that are moving with legislation, and I'm hopeful that people will, be able to do the research and figure out the benefits of using a natural substance like this that gets to the root cause of their issues, as opposed to managing symptoms for the rest of their life.
When you said the history of medication and their mental health, like what are some things that you're, paying attention to or being mindful of when you say that there's certain people that we can't really take? Like, what are some of the things that come to mind?
Yeah. So if you have a history of bipolar or schizophrenia, either yourself or it runs in your family, that's a disqualifier. If you are on high amounts of SSRIs, that actually blocks the receptor that psilocybin fits into. It fits into a 5-HT2A receptor. 80% are in our gut, about 10 or 20% are in the brain. So the last thing you want to do is as a center, you want to be really mindful. A lot of these people are traveling from out of state. They're spending this money and this time to prepare. You don't want them to come to your center, administer this medicine. You hope that they're honest with you, and then they don't get an effect because they're on these high amounts. So typically what we do is we ask people if that's the case. That doesn't disqualify them being on these high amounts of SSRIs, but they have to work with their physician to get down to a safe level in order for the medicine to have a benefit.
Well, to Anthony's point, I'm really curious to see what's going to happen to this industry, because when you look at RFK, he's been in recovery for 40 plus years. He's now the head of the HHS. I know, like with 12-step programs and stuff like that, like, the founder, Bill W., with Dr. Bob, that created the whole Alcoholics Anonymous, like he tried LSD back in the 1930s that people aren't even aware of, but they quickly shot that down. But this is where I'm curious to see, like, as far as the cannabis side that we, talk about a lot, the recreational side is something that they don't even want to look at or consider. I think rescheduling is the first step, but the psychedelic portion, this is where it's really grabbed my interest, because, the data is not, that's the biggest selling point. When you see some of the results that are taking place, like it's been almost 100 years since they invented, obviously, the 12-step program. Times have changed, but this is where I see as the leader of the HHS, where this actually could go, because he's had an experience. Family members have had experience. He's had mental health in his family. And this is where I think, there could be some real progress. Not to say it hasn't happened already.
Yeah, there was a really interesting study that came out about 3 months ago on psilocybin for AUD, alcohol use disorder.
Yeah.
And they actually didn't want the heavy drinkers to detox. They came into the study drinking on average 12 drinks a day. And after one administration of the equivalent of 2.5 grams of mushrooms in one ceremony, they reduced their drinking by 40%. on average. So, what becomes very interesting, Shad, you touched on AA. AA is a spiritual program. It was created because of that experience that Bill W. had. And, when you think about how this can impact addiction, whatever you believe, I tend to take the stance that Gabor Mate takes, right? Is nobody's born an addict, right? We have these traumas that happen in our life, and we use alcohol, we use opiates to cope with that. And so if we can break those destructive thought patterns and loops, then you have a really good shot at not turning back to the actual substance if you get to the root cause of your issues. So I think that's what you're seeing in this early sign of AUD studies. They're doing one on opiate use disorder as well.
Mm-hmm.
But what becomes interesting in Oregon, especially on the West Coast, is we're already having early discussions with rehab centers that don't just want to sell rehab. They don't want a revolving door. They want to detox people. And then we can sit in between the intensive outpatient and inpatient facilities and actually responsibly dose these individuals and then give them back, because we know that there's going to be this psychological support, and they can really dig into the lessons that they saw and learned in this altered state of consciousness at our service center.
What's the biggest misconception that you run into with people, or like biggest data point that people don't think they understand about psychedelics that they really don't understand about these substances?
Great question.
Yeah, it's going to make your brain bleed. Just the stigma associated, right? You guys are up against it with cannabis every day, and you see it. The difference between cannabis and psychedelics, mainly psilocybin is what I stick to, is that there's so much efficacy and safety data out there because we're going through the FDA. And there's over 188 clinical trials going on right now with one substance. Now, you have companies that, deuterate the molecules and go for composition of matter patents. But at the end of the day, this is psilocybin, and it's treating OCD, it's treating alcohol use disorder, opiate use disorder, depression, treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, neurological disorders. And you have to just sit back and ask yourself, how can one substance do that? Well, it does what other medications can't and never will. A synthetic will never be able to address the spiritual maladies that are associated with depression, with anxiety. And it really does get to the root cause of your issues, exasperates what's at the forefront of your mind, and you can meet that head on, so it no longer governs the rest of your life.
There's 188 trials going on right now for psilocybin.
Yeah. There's
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that toxicity profile of psilocybin, let's say compared to like an MDMA or a ketamine, that has a relatively high toxicity profile when compared to psilocybin, bodes well for psilocybin to be that next substance that gains traction within the medical community and abroad as a therapeutic?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been tons of studies already done on toxicity through Compass, through USONA. The worst side effects are that you're going to become nicer. You're going to become more patient. The side effect of psilocybin, or the one knock that the medical community wants to give it, is that it sends you into an altered state of consciousness. But that's where you can learn about why you are living the way that you're living, and then you can make these conscious decisions, right? And these aren't belief systems, right? You go through this experience in this altered state, and it's still your consciousness. You might separate from your physical body, and this is a whole nother discussion, but you still have that experience. You still have that knowing deep inside of you. And it's my thought process that, I tend to I don't like listening to academics. I like listening to people with lived experience. And when you have this lived experience, it's just really impactful. And then really the work starts, right? Then it's on you to really integrate this, to really change yourself. But what we have studied and what we have seen with psilocybin, as opposed to ketamine, the toxicity with ketamine is not favorable, and the half-life to openness, where you're open to these kind of new possibilities and thought patterns and habits, is only 72 hours with ketamine. With psilocybin, it's up to 4 weeks. So you really? Have 4 weeks, right? You have 4 weeks where you can really dig in with a coach, with your therapist, with somebody with a support system, to really change your life and embed those habits.
So is a lot of the
Hmm.
work done during the initial, I don't even want to call it a trip, but the initial experience when that, let's say 4 to 6 hour duration and that window, or is it really compounding the effects that you experience within that window across those, let's say 2 to 4 weeks following the actual ceremony?
Is he still
I think
there?
Dan's frozen.
Oh, you got froze there.
I think you froze. Damn, that was a pretty good question. I wanted to hear the answer to that.
I know. I really wanted to hear that question too. You know, I think the biggest thing right now is just, you know, for a lot of people, there's the outcome and how you feel. You stay there, Dan?
We got him back.
Yeah. Can
Here we
you guys
go.
hear me?
Did you hear that
Yep.
question that Anthony
You hear my
asked?
question?
No, go ahead. Sorry about that.
So in terms of the substance, does that and the therapeutic benefits, does a lot of the work happen within, let's say, that 4 to 6 hour window when you're actually on that trip during the ceremony, or is it really compounding, let's say, the profound nature of that experience across the next 2 to 4 weeks from a therapeutic perspective, kind of building on that?
Yeah, I think it's both, right? I think it
Yeah.
really starts with preparation, right? Psilocybin tends to exasperate what's at the forefront of your mind. That's why.
Oh, got froze again. Shoot. Lost him again there. Yeah, I think it's actually a great questioner and now even greater response by saying it's both. From my understandings is that a lot of people from some of the documentaries I've seen, it's like when they're going to a lot of these treats, it's like kind of like an awakening. And then when you leave from that, it's a lasting memory, which gets you to motivated to obviously try new life habits,
I've
which
never had a bad experience with them, I can tell you firsthand. So
yeah,
it's I
there
can
we are
understand.
again.
There we are.
Hey.
We got him back.
Sorry. So, you know, preparation's paramount. This medicine exasperates what's at the forefront of the mind. So you bring that into the ceremony. It's called an intention or a reason. The environment for which you do it in is very important, but that's a catalyst, right? To your question.
Yep.
It's a catalyst to see and feel and hear what you may need to address in your life. And then it's up to you. Then you come back to this physical body, to this reality, and it's time.
I think we're having more challenges. Sorry, everybody, for this. That's technology at its finest.
Fascinating topic.
Yeah.
Fascinating topic that I would love to dive deeper into, because
Well-
I have experienced actually enhanced neuroplasticity after the fact.
Miggy,
on
am I
several
tripping?
occasions.
Am I tripping? Am I tripping? No, you're not
Yeah.
tripping, my friend. Technical difficulties, as we know. But I wanted to ask him whether or not, you know, we talk about cannabis being rescheduled. If psilocybin indeed gets rescheduled under this administration.
No, I don't think so. I don't even know what schedule actually psilocybin's on.
Okay, we're gonna try this one last time.
Nothing on
Take
schedule 1.
It's a schedule 1. It's a schedule.
Is
1.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It has no medicinal value and it's highly addictive, which couldn't be further from the truth.
No.
So really, it's just about implementing those lessons into your life and making those good life choices afterwards.
Yes.
That's where the special sauce is. That's you know, there's a saying: you hang up the phone, right, if you get the message. So people, you know, going to 40 or 30 of these ceremonies over the course of 2 years is they're missing something, you know. So implementing into your life, having a really good support system, figuring out who your tribe is, working with your therapist if you have one or your coach, is you know, getting on a wellness protocol, exercise, you know, cold exposure, high heat sauna, diet paramount. If you think you're going to go back and hit the bottle and get into processed foods, well, that window is going to shorten. So but this is it's by far the best catalyst that I've ever come across to impact your life positively.
Yeah, and I think the big message too for people to really understand this more and more is start talking about the things that people are struggling with that they can relate to. And I think that's key for messaging because, you know, whether you're a player like yourself that played in the NHL that had concussions, or you're an everyday businessman trying to support a family, I think there's so much in common. We look at suicide rates, especially among males in the ages of between 40 and 55 years old, is skyrocketing high because the amount of pressures of day-to-day stuff. I can understand that, being an entrepreneur itself, but these are the types of things that I think will pivot people more to understanding what it actually can do for you if there's things that you can mention that you've gone through that they could relate to. But
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there's a saying that Wayne Dyer has where it's like, you dance your dance, right? You sing your song, and whoever's going to hear it, whoever's going to see it, those are the people that need it, right? You don't ever push this on anyone, There's enough people suffering, and people need an out. It's on Netflix, Michael Pollan's written about it.
Yep.
There's more than enough information out there for people.
I think we lost him again.
I'm gonna give it 30 seconds. I want to ask him who he's got tomorrow night in the hockey game.
Yeah, we got to ask that last question. It's been a few comments here. I'm going to address them afterwards, but yeah, it's been a fun-filled day to say the least, based on a lot of responses. Here we go.
We got him back.
Yeah, we got a lot of that.
It's not you guys. It's me for sure.
Is it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's not your feed. It's my internet.
We got to get you. We got to get you on that Starlink.
Yeah, absolutely. But I heard your question. I'm gonna have to go with the US.
Going with the US, even if they're banged up. Man, that D's pretty hard. What'd you think though? As much as concussions and everything, but as a true hockey fan, what'd you think of that start on Saturday night? That was one for the ages.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Let's be a realist.
Yeah,
Who didn't like that? But I think there is some political tension brewing in Montreal, and I think that'll overflow into Boston tomorrow night. Be curious to see if President Trump actually attends, as Mike Sullivan, the head coach, was saying he hopes he's in the crowd. Or Bill Guerin, the GM of the Team USA, mentioned that.
I saw that.
Yeah, that's
Bill Guerin's the GM of Team USA. Oh wow,
guys won it. He won a few Stanley Cups.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good seeing you, and we got to keep in touch. You going down to the Psychedelic conference in Denver in June?
Yeah, I'll be there. Yep.
Nice. We got to catch up, get reacquainted. Cool. That time in Denver a couple years ago, it was good times, and it was.
Oh, you had a good time.
A lot of stuff we learned, but listen, appreciate it. Tell Cody we say hi too, and Joe Calpiano as well. But good to chat with you, and let's keep in touch. Okay,
Anthony, you got to cook me a meal, dude. Let's go.
No kidding.
You got my phone number.
Let's go. All right, boys.
You got my phone number.
All right, buddy.
Onwards. Thanks, Daniel. Take care.
Boys.
What a great story, man. The guy changed his life around. He's on some of the conversations had of him.
Well, it's wild because obviously it's anecdotal, but I mean, that is living proof that his life was fundamentally changed by these substances like CTE, concussions, just he went through the ringer. And it worked. It worked. The proof is in the pudding.
He was on suicidal watch. He told me, like, even at the end of a season, and then you talk about 7 concussions. I had a father who passed away. It'll be 2 years now, in the next week or two. Died of dementia, and that's something that obviously weighs on your mind when you see a parent pass away and you start thinking about yourself and your future. But that's something that they have to monitor very closely, especially with 7 concussions throughout a playing career. Like that's an eye opener, to say the least. But good for him. What a story. And I see a lot of his stuff on Instagram right now. Guy's constantly exercising, an athlete at heart, and he's made some great choices in life.
It's amazing. It's amazing what eating well and exercise does for the human body and the mind.
Yeah.
It is not going to solve all your problems, but it will immensely impact you for
the better. Do you do the cold plunge?
No.
No.
I'm a big high heat sauna person. I'm a big steam room person. I'm a big cardio and weightlifting person.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate cold water. I don't do the cold plunging.
There's a couple comments on here I wanted to address. I didn't think they were very accurate. It was based on, where is this? G. Edwards was a guy who was commenting basically on providing financial advice and wanting to sell. And I just wanted to make that very clear. Something we never do and will advise to. All we do is basically educate people on what's developing, here in the cannabis space. But something that I wanted to address, and something that we would never, ever do, and will never, ever do as well. But, we have these executives on, we have people from Washington on, we basically try to educate you on the overall industry as a whole. And that's it. As far as you guys make an investment decision, it's on you, not us.
Miggy's great, by the way, and so is Deborah. Deborah's
I know.
hilarious in the chat, and she's here pretty much every day now.
I know. She has been a great addition to a lot of the comments. What do we got Friday? How's the wife by the doing? She's expected when? 3 days, 4 days?
Any day now.
Any day now.
Our bags are packed, so any day now.
Yeah. Well, if you want, people, wish Anthony and his wife all the best as they grow their family, and give this video a like based off of that. And anyway, in the meantime, make sure to subscribe to our Big Ten newsletter by scanning that QR code. And yeah, it's been a great show here today. We'll be back here Friday morning, 11 a.m. Hopefully we can get Dan for the Chart Guys back on, and then we'll talk about.
Hopefully I'll be here on Friday.
There's a few other people that we've reached out to, but we'll leave that. Keep you updated on who we're going to have on next. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we'll see you back here Friday morning, 11 a.m. Yep. Thanks, AB.
See you, everybody.
Now, that was a good one. What'd you guys all think? Did you like what we had to say here today? Do you agree, disagree with what we're saying? Love to get your feedback. As usual, leave comments below. Trade to Black is growing, and we wouldn't have done it without you. So if you haven't done so, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check us out on Apple and Spotify for the audio version. And as usual, leave lots of comments. We, as I said, love to hear back from you. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.